Good morning guys, welcome to another Road Pilgrim car review, and today we've got the Audi Q4 e-tron on review with us today, which is of course the all-new electric SUV from Audi that's just reached our shores, just went on sale. I'm really excited to review this car actually because I saw this car at a motor show, and I think it was one of the cars that I probably am anticipating the most in Singapore for arrival this year. And maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not so sure, but because I was anticipating it, my expectations of it might be a little bit higher. But let's see how the review goes. We'll take the car for a drive, we'll take a look at its inside and outside, and we'll give you our thoughts about the car. But before we do all that, if you're a driver in Singapore and you're thinking about renewing your car insurance or selling your used car for the best price possible, be sure to check out the link in the description box below because we've got the best deals for you there. Free to inquire, so if you are interested in those, please check them out. With that, let's get on with the review. Let's go. Alright, so jumping straight into the review, this is the exterior of the Q4 e-tron, and generally speaking, the styling language is very similar to that of the Q8 e-tron. So, and in fact, I think there's a little bit of the Q3 from 2 generations ago that's kind of blended in, a bit of a bulbous, roundish shape. And I would say that styling accents on the car are quite conservative. You know, you don't have too many jagged edges, you don't have too many aggressive bits flaring out. Most of the car feels very sort of blended into its own silhouette. So I think that looks quite good and will definitely appeal to a certain group of people. But one thing I don't quite understand about the Q4 e-tron is that in this base model, I'm not sure why they have chosen this styling of wheels, because, and of course this is personal opinion and subjective, but I think these wheels look a little bit frumpy. They look a little bit basic, they look a little bit unathletic. And this is a car, the Q4 e-tron, this is a car that's probably the quickest one in its segment right now, compared to say the ID4 and the ID5 and the iX1. This Q4 e-tron is actually the quickest, but it actually looks the least sporty and the least athletic of the bunch. And this might be me nitpicking a little bit, but Singaporeans or car purchasing in Singapore, I think it's quite visual and aesthetically reliant, meaning the consumer is definitely going to pay attention to the aesthetics of the car. And if your segment mates are already, you know, they already come with like really nice sports wheels as stock, and the consumer doesn't have to change them out to fit their preference, then that's definitely a plus point as well. So for a small price to install sportier looking S-line wheels on the car, I feel that Audi have kind of taken a risk with these wheels. Like, it's a make or break factor, because if I don't like the look of the car and I don't want to spend money to change wheels or take the brand new wheels off my car, then I'm probably going to gravitate towards the other cars, which are only gonna have maybe like a $10,000 difference, which, you know, in terms of car purchasing, down payments and monthlies, it's not gonna make much of a difference. $10,000 is very little when it comes to breaking it down into installments. So I don't know, if Audi were to re-release this car at some point, maybe with a Cat A version of the car, it would be nice to see this car come in an S-line kit off the shelf, rather than, you know, these 19-inch wheels that really are a little bit too unathletic and small for a car of this caliber. But aside from that, if you can look past the wheels, the rest of the car is actually really, really nice. I like the way the car is styled. It's quite sensible, it's quite premium, and because it's a little bit less showy than, for example, the iX1, I think it will appeal to a little bit of a slightly more mature crowd as well. But really, the wheels are a real deal for me. It's like seeing somebody dress up in like the nicest dress and then with the wrong shoes on. So let's go check out the inside of the car, the interior of the car, and see whether or not the interior is any better to look at. Good morning guys. Okay, so welcome to the cabin of the Q4 e-tron. Let's turn the car on, let the car get started. So, this is the cabin of the Q4 e-tron. I'm not sure what you think about it. First impressions is that it is very in line with what Audi has always been pushing out. So a little bit of avant-garde style, rather simple, kept in a very standard color scheme of, you know, black and grey and silver and matte chrome. Whether or not you think that's interesting, that's very subjective, but I think it's safe to say that some people or certain segments of people will definitely think that the interior of the Q4 e-tron is a little bit boring. And I think there's good reason to say that as well. I would not blame somebody for saying that, because there are quite a number of things that feel quite dated on the Q4 e-tron, although it's a new car to hit Singapore. So a lot of switchgear, a lot of the buttons, the infotainment unit, the driver's display, this gear selector here, these were already found on cars produced by Audi quite a number of years ago. So unfortunately, it feels like a lot of the switchgear comes from maybe 2 to 3 years ago, which of course makes the Q4 e-tron feel a little bit older than it actually is. And you know, if you're the sort of consumer that's after the latest, nicest looking things in the market, then I'm of the opinion that the Q4 e-tron is probably not for you, because I feel like for a brand new car in Singapore, a brand new model in Singapore, a little bit of a statement had to be made. You know, the car cannot look like the generation before it. So that's just my 2 cents worth. I'm not sure whether you think that's important, but you know, on the other hand, if you are the sort of consumer that's really just after value for money, a good, well-made product, you know, the Q4 e-tron is very, very well built. There's no complaints about its build quality whatsoever. In fact, I think at the current moment, Audi, along with brands like BMW, will probably have some of the best build qualities in the market at the moment. And if you just want that, you know, then I think the Q4 e-tron will definitely not present you any problems. You've got a touchscreen infotainment unit that's CarPlay compatible, Android Auto compatible. You've got very sensible temperature or climate control buttons below the infotainment unit, where you can very directly address the climate control menu. So that's very convenient. And then of course you've got a center console that's very simple, very easy to navigate as well. Cup holders, USB ports, everything you need is here. Digital driver's display, the original Audi virtual cockpit, that's there. There are some differences in the way the menus are laid out compared to the previous versions, but and actually I'm quite surprised, because you don't get the electric displays that you get with the for example, the Audi e-tron, the original Audi e-tron. There was this sort of a single dial with a green ring around it. You don't get that in this car. I'm not entirely sure why. But what you get that's brand new, of course, is the brand new steering wheel. This is brand new. You haven't seen this before. It's sort of a flat top and flat bottom, and it's got this very nice, almost like a wood finish 2D logo, which I think is very, very pretty. This probably is the most stylish bit of the interior. It would be awesome if the rest of the interior looked a lot more like the design language that this steering wheel was trying to convey. But let's not be mistaken, I'm not trying to bash the car here, but it is a fact that the car doesn't really look as upmarket or as premium or as new as some of its other competitors. But it is still a very, very well built interior that's extremely functional, and there's no complaints about the way that it functions at all. With that, let's jump into the back of the car, check out how the rear seats are like in the Q4 e-tron. Okay, so jumping into the rear of the Q4 e-tron, this driver's seat is my regular driving position. I'm 175 meters tall, and this is the amount of legroom that I have. And headroom is actually really, really good as well. So keep in mind, this is the regular Q4 e-tron, whereas there is also a Sportback version which we haven't yet tested. I'm not sure how the headroom of the Sportback version is going to be affected, but going by Audi's track record, it should be quite sensibly done. They have always shown a great sensibility when creating the Sportback versions of the car and balancing function over just the appearance of the car. But in any case, very good amount of legroom here. I'll say this is extremely comparable with, say, the ID4, ID5 kind of cars. The seats are a little bit low to the ground, so you don't really have much space to put your feet underneath. But the second row floor is flat, almost flat, like really like it's. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is flat. So this is actually going to be quite nice to carry like 3 people at the back. Of course, not 3 full-size adults, but if you got 2 adults and a child, or if you got like 3 very small-sized people, or if you got like a helper and 2 teenagers, I think they will all fit quite happily in the rear here. ISOFIX points are of course standard, really easy to access these. So, and given the amount of space, I would say that this is very easy to put a child seat in as well, even a rearward facing one. So Q4 e-tron definitely ready for family life and definitely usable by a young family in Singapore. So that's very good. Let's jump back into the driver's seat now, take the car for a drive and see how it fares on the road. Let's go. Alright, so back in the driver's seat of the Q4 e-tron. Start the car up. And actually you don't really have to start the car up as well. If you have to key the car, step on the brakes, the car will actually go into ready mode as well. So pretty convenient. But now we're going to go take the car for a drive. And before we take the car for a drive, of course, let's go through some basic specifications of the car. So this runs on an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack. So pretty suitable for a car this size, I would say. I think most of the cars that have come out around this size and this kind of weight range, this car weighs about 2 tons, have been around this sort of battery pack size. And this runs on a single motor, driving power to the rear wheels, 282 brake horsepower, 545 Newton meters of torque, 0 to 100 in 6.7 seconds. So let's move off, take the car for a drive, and I'll share with you a little bit about what I think. So I think first things first, I want to talk a little bit about battery, or not say battery size, but specifications of the car, because I think this segment of car is quite competitive at the moment. So if you talk about SUV, an electric SUV, sort of a mid-size or slightly smaller than mid-size, bit of a compact SUV. So around the $240,000 to $270,000 range. You've got, of course, the 3 main competitors, which are the ID4, which is the largest of the bunch. You've got the Q4 e-tron, which has an introductory price that sits between the ID4 and the more expensive BMW iX1. Now, after the introductory price is done, I'm not exactly sure how much the Q4 e-tron will be retailing for, but let's just take the introductory price as the benchmark for the moment. So what I feel is that the Q4 e-tron could have been a little bit better spec'd for Singapore. And what do I mean by that? So out of the bunch, the 3 cars, the Q4 e-tron has the most power. But is it power that you necessarily need for a car like that? For me, the answer is no, because a car like that probably only needs maybe just about over 200 horsepower, and that should be more than adequate. And by virtue of the fact that it has an electric motor, or rather it's an electric car, torque figures also don't need to be so high. Because the reality is, in Singapore, you will hardly utilize that sort of power. And I think for anybody looking to buy a car in this segment, using it as a family car for the young family, or just as a daily run around, go to work, come back, get groceries, fetch the kids, that sort of thing, you really don't need such high levels of performance. And of course, you know, the Q4 e-tron isn't groundbreakingly fast or isn't built as a performance car, but nonetheless, I think that 282 brake horsepower and 545 Newton meters of torque is a little bit more than you need. And if the Q4 e-tron were to have a little bit less power, I wonder if the car could have either managed a little bit more range, Currently now it's about 466 kilometers on a single charge, which is already not bad, but I'm wondering if it could have been class beating if it had just been tuned down a little bit more, or if the price could have been a little bit more competitive. Because overall, and now we get to the good parts, overall I think the car is quite a pleasant car to drive. It's very, very composed, and I like the way the car rolls. In certain EVs, power is kind of delivered in a very stabby way, in a very punchy way. So that's nice if you want, like, you know, if you want a lot of acceleration, if you want a lot of power off the line. But I think the Q4 e-tron is very well calibrated in that sense. It rolls off very nicely. It has this naturally aspirated feel to it, which I quite enjoy. And you know, obviously EV drivetrains are generally all very refined, they're all very quiet, and they're all very comfortable, but I feel like the Q4 e-tron just does it a little bit better than its segment mates. It's just a little bit more, it has more poise to the way that it moves on and glides on. So I think it's a little bit of a waste actually that the car isn't exactly spec'd to the Singapore market, or there isn't a version of the car that is spec'd for the Singapore market, because I think it could do quite well if it were priced a little bit lower, and if it had maybe less power and more range. I think that would make a better selling point, because if you tell the average consumer that yes, you know, my car can go 2 seconds faster 0 to 100 than its competitor in the same segment, I don't think anybody really cares about that. But if you say that my car can go, like, say 60 kilometers further or 100 kilometers further, somehow that matters to the local Singaporean consumer. So I think that's something that I maybe, you know, in the next cycle or in future iterations of the Q4 e-tron, perhaps Audi might consider producing even like a Cat A version of this car, because I think that would be absolutely perfect. Currently now the car sits in Cat B, and of course, you know, the ID4 sits in Cat B as well, but with the iX1 there is actually a Cat A version of the car, which I think is gonna absolutely fly off the shelves. Some little quirks about the car. I found that braking on the car felt a little bit on the softer side, meaning, like, you know, under more aggressive braking it almost felt a little bit inadequate. And then I was doing a little bit of research and I found out that the car actually runs on drum brakes in the rear, so that was pretty interesting. We'll have to go a little bit faster because there's somebody behind me. Okay, but in any case, yeah, so drum brakes in the rear, I'm not sure what that is about. I'm not sure what the advantages are. I'm pretty sure there is a reason why the engineers over at Audi have decided to put drum brakes on the rear, which is something that we haven't seen on cars in quite a number of years. But drum brakes on the car, I'm really not sure what the advantage is, but I'm just giving this guy a bit of a because he went out to the outer lane, the opposing lane, to overtake. So I just showed him what EV power feels like. He's causing problems up front as well. Okay, sorry, I digress. So yeah, drum brakes. I'll be very interested to know what the advantage is, or what the reasoning behind putting drum brakes on this car is, because I'll be very honest, I don't know the reason. And I can't think of a reason. But I'm pretty sure there is a reason. So if you guys know the reason why the Q4 e-tron has drum brakes in the rear for a car that weighs 2 tons, and you know why Audi have implemented a piece of technology that hasn't really been applied on cars for a while, why are they suddenly bringing it back? Perhaps there is something that we don't know. Put it in the comment section below. I would love to find out more about this. But anyway, overall, yes. If you're talking about speed, definitely there's speed. I'm gonna punch the car out for a bit of acceleration right now. So, oof, definitely you feel it. So this could be a very fun car to drive if you're into that kind of thing. If you want the extra power while spending within this segment, definitely the Q4 e-tron is the best of the bunch, because, you know, like I said, at this price point, the Q4 e-tron is probably the most powerful. In fact, it handles pretty well as well. I think it's body roll is all quite managed, well managed. But you know, for a rear-wheel drive car, I found that the wheel kind of pulls back surprisingly quickly for, you know, after you make your U-turns and after you make your turns. Not necessarily a bad thing, but Typically, rear-wheel drive cars for me have a little bit more composure in the way the wheel recovers. You have to kind of guide it back as well, which of course makes you feel like you're a little bit more in control. You don't really let go of the wheel and then let it spring back, you know. But in the Q4 e-tron, driving dynamics still feels a bit like a front-wheel drive car. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something to take note of. Please don't read the brochure, see rear-wheel drive, and immediately think that this drives like a BMW. It doesn't. Okay. In fact, the funny thing is that iX1 is probably front-wheel drive, so a little bit of a twist of fate there, a little bit of a change in baseline there. But yes. Alright, so if you are thinking about trying out the Q4 e-tron, I really suggest trying out the car, because I think in this segment things are very competitive. There are a lot of little quirks and uniqueness about each individual car in this segment that it's pretty hard to explain in the car review. You have to kind of feel it for yourself. For example, like the ID4 and ID5, they have this suspension setup that's, you know, really nice to drive and dynamic, but not so comfortable when it comes to like little undulations over the road. And then of course the iX1 is on paper the least powerful, but it's actually quite a pleasant car to drive. Q4 e-tron's kind of in between, you know, most powerful car, middle of the park handling, middle of the park comfort as well. I think it's generally quite comfortable. On the highways it's all good. Up on smaller roads, I think it's can be better. But to end off the review, what I'm going to say about the Q4 e-tron is that I think power utilization in the car seems to be its strong suit. So I was just driving around. So actually from home, I've been driving along this service road. So I'm not exactly on a highway as well. I've just been driving slowly and in a sort of a single lane kind of carriageway. And I'm managing about 17.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So actually that's pretty good for a car this size, a car this weight. I feel like with the new generation of, or the second generation of Audi EVs, they have kind of really put a lot of emphasis on making the cars more efficient, and I think you can really feel that and see that. In fact, just over the weekend when I was driving my family around, I actually managed to get about 13.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and that was a mixture of course city driving and highway driving. No IU detected? Oh no. This new OBU thing is a little bit of a headache. So frustrating. Got traffic at the back as well. Oh, this is crazy, man. I can't even get the IU to work. Alright, it's finally opened. Okay, so sorry about that, guys. Yeah, power utilization seems to be really good. Efficiency is there, and I was able to get about 13.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers when I was driving my family around. So I think you can look forward to that. You know, even though EVs are by virtue efficient and sustainable, so to speak, there are still a lot of differences between the way that EVs actually use their power. And I think the Q4 e-tron definitely is one of those cars, or one of those EVs that utilizes its electric power in a very efficient manner. So yeah, that's that. I'm gonna end off the review now, but if you have any questions about the Q4 e-tron, things that I missed out on, please put your questions in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And if you have enjoyed this review, found it useful in any way, please give this video a like, consider subscribing to the channel, because we've got more reviews coming out every single week. It would be wonderful if you could join us for those reviews as well. And as usual, before we head off, if you are a driver in Singapore and you think about selling your used car for the best price possible, or getting the best price for your insurance renewal code, very important, please check out the link in the description box. We've got the best possible deals for you there. Free to inquire, so check those links out if you can. With that, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.